Check 1 2.
Check 1 2. Yeah. I just thought I'd go straight into it. Just press record. Let's do it like this, right? Because we like a cold intro, don't we? Yeah. Just like straight. Today on the Shrewsbury Biscuit, we've got the world famous Jim Hawkins.
Thank you anyway. Hello.
He was just like as if he just did that. Are you? Say something, Shane.
Hello.
Turn your microphone on.
There we go. There we go.
Shane is here.
Hello.
Thank you very much for sitting with us.
That's all right. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, you finally found the place.
Yeah, I finally found you. Worth the wait, though. Definitely.
Absolutely. I found him wandering around on Trinity Street. Help! Hello.
Yeah.
Are you Alex? Are you Alex?
It's right, like I'm trying to
Door knocking. Is this Alex residence?
I nearly did actually. It was because there was a woman that came out of number 24, Trinity Street.
Yeah.
And I was about to go up to her and say, "Is that you?" And am I in the right place? And she just scurried back inside, closed the door really sharp.
Do you know what? This neighbourhood is so almost private. I mean, we've got people we're friends with. Yeah, you know, lots of people talk, but everybody's that private. If you went up and went, "I'm looking for the guy that does the Shrewsbury Biscuit," they'd be like, "Ah."
Yeah, yes, yeah.
I'm looking for a Shrewsbury Biscuit. Oh.
Go to a shop then.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's some very, very arcane code for something, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm looking for some Shrewsbury Biscuit, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
got me
Some
biscuit.
Grope Lane.
Yeah.
we were talking about Grope Lane with Stan Sedman, and I said to him, "Is it like what I've heard?" Because Stan Sedman knows his stuff, and I was like, "Is it what it was? What I'm telling you?" He's like,
Yeah. Anyway.
He had some really interesting facts, you know.
He does, doesn't he?
I'm gutted I missed that one. I'm not going to lie because I was working. I'm a bit gutted I missed that.
He just knows everything.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
He's an absolute asset to the town, and
totally.
And I was saying to him that we should get some like understudies for Stan. We should call him the Sedman Tours. Keep him as Stan Sedman thinks, and have like a proper legacy, you know?
Absolutely.
Because he's no spring chicken, of course. So it would be nice to.
Careful.
We know we need Stan Sedman stands, I suppose. Yeah, quite. Yeah, we need extra stands.
Yeah. So let's talk about you now. Thank you for sitting with us off the BBC. And I know you're not. This isn't the nice suave offices you're used to.
No. Seriously, I do a lot of recording on location. I've recorded in some extraordinary places. So sitting in someone's not cozy, comfortable kitchen is absolutely fine.
So you do quite a bit on the outside. You do take. You know, is that something you like to do?
I'd used to do an awful lot. I used to do an awful lot more. I used to do a lot involved with the radio, and I used to do quite a lot of other stuff as well. And I was actually just running myself into the ground. So I eventually stopped. I did actually at one point.
Take note.
Yes, actually, seriously. I mean, it's all right doing what you love, but doing what you love can become a real burden if you end up doing it so much time. I did get to the point where I was working like 60 hours a week at the radio station, and my producer would actually book holidays for me.
Yeah.
I would just either forget or deliberately not. And I'd be walking around like a hollow wraith shadow of a man. And so eventually they actually made me stop that. I just suddenly thought, actually, I don't need to do this. I don't need to. So I do other things. I do some photography. I do some event hosting. I play some guitar, but mostly what I do is be on the radio.
Yeah, awesome. And how did that all start for you then?
That all started. That all started a heck of a long time ago. Seriously, I mean, for you guys, it is going to seem like that was when everything was in black and white. But it started for me in probably about 40 years ago. What did I tell you? There you go. Ask your dad. When I started doing hospital radio in Leamington Spa, where I was living at the time. And I got into that because I'd been doing some live audio engineering and sound engineering and recording engineering at a recording studio. So I went there to help out with the engineering, which was, I've got to say, I couldn't work any other stuff. Well, I could drive your desk, but as far as the digital stuff, I know you're using Audacity, and I can just about use Audacity. But anything more complicated than on the digital front, forget it. I up until when everything was all analog, you could put me in pretty much any studio anywhere, 24, 48 track, and I could do the thing. And since everything's gone digital, it's like, I don't know how this works.
You press a button, it all goes wrong. You're like,
I've got no idea. So I started off doing that, and because I did know how it worked at the time, I had comprehensively been overtaken by 2 generations younger than me. And then they needed someone to do a couple of shows, so I did. And then I went to university, and I did university radio it's now Raw 1215. It was then W963, which is the student radio station at the University of Warwick, which was a fantastic place to be and huge fun and had the most amazing location. We're talking about incredible locations.
Warwick's beautiful.
Warwick is a beautiful university, and you can't really see where it is now, but because they built up all around it. But the student union was kind of triangular and came to a point, and at the top of this pointed building was an enormous glass window that looked right out across Coventry and Warwickshire, and that was our studio.
Right.
And it was just the best thing in the world. I mean, it sounded awful, to be honest with you.
Especially when it rained.
It sounded terrible, but the views were amazing. And so that was great. And then while I was there, this tells you how long ago it was, a radio station was opening up in Coventry, which was the 21st ever commercial radio station in this country, and there's now like hundreds, so that tells you how long ago it was. And they needed people who knew a bit about radio, who'd do stuff cheap, and so they basically came down with a big butterfly net and roped a whole load of us in, and I was one of them. And I was actually spending more time there than I was at university, so I ended up being on the radio by default. I was terrible.
Really?
Yeah. I've still got the tapes, and no one's ever going to hear them. I was awful. I mean, I was 19, 20. I was there till I was fucking radio. I got the hang of it eventually. Yeah, by the mid '80s, I just kind of figured it out.
Yeah. I think this sort of thing is definitely, you've got to have experience. You've got to just keep doing it.
Yeah.
And I've learned. I mean, a couple of weeks ago. It wasn't a couple of weeks ago. One we were recording last week, but by the time this goes up, anyway, I found some old audio on this laptop. I'd hidden it in some obscure file somewhere, and I was like, "Oh, we could use that." Like, we got nothing to release, and it was a couple of interviews that me and Shane did at Comic Salopia back in May, June.
June, wasn't it?
And even then. It's only a couple of months. Even then, I sounded so like frigid and so kind of. Can you
weren't relaxed into it?
Yeah, and it's really weird because like I always feel like as soon as I switched on this mic, it was like oh, it was kind of. And Lorraine Fletcher was saying this because I can get quite anxious at times. Shane,
Alex's social awkwardness is just hilarious.
I can do, especially if I'm going around. I do a lot of shows where I go around people's houses and I'm just like, yeah, they'll put the kettle on and whatever, yeah, then we'll get on with it. But I'm just like, thank you. Yeah. And then I switch on the microphone and I'm like, hi, welcome to the Shrewsbury Biscuit. You know, it's very, very odd. And how was it for you when you first started? Did you find that as soon as you started, it was kind of like, it's good for you, but you had to work at it.
I can remember I remember after the first few shows I did, and the first couple of shows they were only an hour long, but it was live radio, and you were on one of hardly any radio stations in the country.
Right.
And I was so exhilarated but so exhausted. I didn't know whether to run around the block or just lie down. I think after about my third or fourth week, seriously, I was just like a kid. They had no one to do the sports program, the 4-hour live sports program on Saturday afternoon with Coventry City, who at that time a Division 1 team, when Division 1 was actually Division 1, and all the local football and all sorts of everything. And it was mostly speech, and I had to do that. And I actually came off the air and lay down on the floor in reception for about 45 minutes. But when it's as far as I used to try and sound like someone being on the radio.
Yeah.
And I actually had kind of two voices. Funnily enough, we were talking about this on the show a couple of days ago about if you have another persona that you inhabit, because we were talking about RuPaul's Drag Race, and we heard from some drag queens, including one with the remarkable name of Vinegar Strokes. I don't know how I kept. One was called Bag of Chips, and the other one was called Vinegar Strokes. I have no idea how I kept a straight face. Or actually said that on the BBC. I feel bad enough saying it now. But we were talking about, do you have another persona that you inhabit, as if you might be a guy called Steve, and then you become Bag of Chips or whatever. And I said, if you'd have another persona, whether it's cosplay or drag or whatever that you do, introduce me to them, come on the radio and tell me about them. And I suddenly thought, actually, I'm doing this now. This is my other persona almost, because basically when I'm on the radio, it's kind of 105% of me.
I feel
It's
that.
like but like you, I have mental health problems. So I have anxiety and depression. I've had that for years, and the anxiety thing is terrible.
Yeah.
And people say, well, how the heck can you actually do that? And I've been doing it for so long.
Yeah.
I've kind of got the hang of it now. But
it's kind of nice to have like something to almost, because I'm the same as you. Anxiety for me is terrible. I mean, I've trying to explain it to my. At the moment, I'm open about it. I'm just starting to do therapy now, and I'm trying to work at it. Yeah. And I'm trying to explain it to people that don't suffer from anxiety, and it's really difficult, right? Because you can't just be like, "Oh, I feel really angry," and they'll be like, "Why?" And you're like, There's no reason. I'm feeling really shy, really ridiculously shy. I mean, Comics and Opie is a perfect example, because I was at the opener and there's like millions of pounds worth of artists and creators in this room. I've got my Tascam microphone and I'm supposed to go around and mingle and do the Peter Parker thing, you know? Yeah, and I'm just stood in the corner like, nah.
No, I can't do that at all. No,
and it's weird, but
it is terrifying. And if it's the opposite of what people believe you're going to do, then it's doubly terrifying. The number of things that I kind of tentatively say I'll do or I'll go to, and I never do, because actually I can't face it. And often, I mean, this is fun, and I'm glad you asked me, and it's an honour to be asked, and thank you very much. And I know that because I've been listening to the podcast, I know that the deal is just kind of hanging out and having a chat. Right?
Yeah.
And that's fine. And I get where you two guys are coming from, and Julie and everybody, and that's, I know what the deal is. If I'm in an unusual situation, or anywhere like that, and then the anxiety kicks in big time, and I got no idea what I did before I had a mobile phone, because you just hide behind that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's weird, because I have two ways to go when I'm in awkward situations. I either completely shell up and I struggle. I mean, you've experienced that sometimes. I just don't know what you put me on the spot sometimes. Yeah. And like the other day on the other podcast, you just turn around and you're just like, okay, Shane's going to open the start the podcast now. 3, 2, 1, do record. And I was like, I just didn't know what to say.
And it was a great little setup. What I did was, right, I was trying to explain to people how hard it was for me to start my first ever podcast, and like, it was really hard. I did 17 takes of it, but unbeknownstly to Shane, I was going to use him as the guinea pig and be like, right, start the show, go. Yeah. And he struggled, and it's hard.
Yeah, so like, I've got kind of that side of things where my brain's completely blank and I have just no idea what I'm doing. But then the other side of it is I tend to go over the top. So I'll start acting out. And I try to be like the Joker, and like try to be the most funny one in the room, and like be the loudest, or the and it's something which I've been trying to work on for a number of years, because similar to you, I do struggle with a lot of things. And actually, funny enough, that's how Alex got me onto the podcast.
Oh, right.
Because I was going through, I'm actually now officially divorced, right? And I was going through a really rough patch, and. That's how me and Alex met, because we met at the prison doing scare acting, as obviously a lot of our listeners will know. Yeah. And we got chatting. We got a very similar sort of life, things we've been through and whatever. We've got very.
I thought you were going to say similar attraction then, but no.
No. You're far better looking than me, dude. You're much better.
Our eyes met across the Victorian cell.
No, actually, my eye was hanging out. My brain was hanging out. So, and I did your makeup. So that was a glorious moment, wasn't it? And so we got talking about the struggles I was having at the time, and Alex was just like, you should just come on the show. Because it really helped me, because that's how Alex got onto it. For the same sort of reasons, as like an outlet. And he just come on the podcast, and that was it.
Really well.
Yeah. And funny enough, you should say about listening to old audio and stuff, because I listened to some audio when I first started on Thorskin.
Oh, you were awful.
And
it was awful.
I listened to myself. My voice actually changed. Like it sounds different now. Like
what our audience got from that was they listened to you develop, and now our fans love him, and he's actually been off Thorskin for a while now, and people are asking for you. They're like, "Where's Shane?" He just disappeared.
I'll be surprised when he comes back, because he used to sound like this. He was so worried about it.
So those are very
Haribo advert, when this is my favourite one.
Oh, that's so weird. Oh no!
What was it like? I mean, I guess you've had a few years' experience, but like, I don't know how it works at the BBC. I mean, I got to sit and watch the morning show being produced because I went from being really rude on the other show to having to learn how to ad lib in a safe manner for everyone's ear. So they were kind enough to let me go and watch things being produced. But like, as far as planning guests are concerned, how does that go? Do they go, all right, okay, you've got Tracy and she's from Macclesfield and she's got a really cute dog. Go.
Sometimes I don't get that much information. Well, some of the people that come on the show we have set up in advance, so I kind of know who they are, and cues and questions have been written for me. So either Tim, the producer, or one of the rotating cast of assistants that we have, will have written some questions for me, so I know, and there'll be some briefing notes, and I'll probably have looked up something about these people anyway. I mean, we do something every Monday called the Cool Seat, which is it's a kind of podcast vibe to it, which is because actually it started off in two ways. One was I was getting frustrated talking to some really interesting people for only 10 or 12 minutes at a time. And the other one was we were doing they kind of eased off on it now, but we did it very seriously for quite a while. Did something called the hot seat, where we took people who are in charge of stuff and held them to account. And, if you're the head of something or the director of something or the chief executive of something, you come in the studio and I'll ask you awkward questions, and our listeners will as well. And I just wanted something that was a bit more comfortable than that. So with the opposite of that for me was the cool seat. So we'd get cool people in. And there's quite a lot of crossover, actually, between some of your guests and some of mine when it comes to the cool seat. So we just get cool people in, and I can talk to them at greater length for that. And so if it's a cool seat, I will probably spend quite a bit of time finding out about. Yeah. And still I get surprised by some of these.
Yeah, there's two approaches. I mean, today to speak to Lorraine and to Stan, I wrote down loads of notes. Sorry, last week I had to take loads of notes because, these guys are important in the community, and you've got to get it right. And then Lorraine is absolutely fine. Stan is just a superstar.
Absolutely.
And but there's sometimes it's just better to just. I haven't written any notes today because I was just like, just have a chat.
Yeah, exactly.
We're getting so much better. That we are, with the hot seat. When you were saying that, I was thinking, there's so many people I'd love to put at that seat.
Yeah, mate. I was just thinking
some old managers I've worked for.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
So what were you thinking when you let three people go on annual leave at the same time, Darren?
Leaving me on the department on my own.
Yeah, everyone should be able to do their own personal hot seat.
They should. I think
once a year.
Yes, it's like what's that movie where once a year there are nothing's that's it, The Purge. Mm-hmm. It's once a year you can pick one person and you get an hour to ask them or say to them anything you want
without any fallback.
When they come back into it
with a lie detector attached.
All any technology that you
when
want.
you decline my holiday request. What's that for a genuine reason?
What's it like? I mean, like I've interviewed. I think I've probably had at least one. Trying to think now, person that's I've just not been able to get anything out of in an interview.
Yeah,
and it can be awkward with a podcast, but you can always jazz it up. You can always shorten the breaks in the conversation, things like that. Live on air, how's that for you? Because
well, there's a number of categories that this falls into. Okay, one is where because actually going to I'm not making much sense here, but recording this in essentially your kitchen.
Yes, it is
a cool and relaxed place, right? Yeah. A radio station studio is not a cool and relaxed place because it's full of weird equipment, and it's an alien environment for most of the people that come into it. And there is something about a radio studio that weirds out almost everybody who's never been in one.
It's almost like a clinical kind of environment in a way, isn't it?
But you can't define why, and the reason why you can't define why is because it's essentially an anechoic environment. There is no echo.
Yeah.
It's a very, very acoustically dead environment, and you're very rarely in an environment like that.
Yeah.
I mean, you did quite a few hard walls and tiles here, so if I do this, echoes around. Did that in the radio station, not a thing. Yeah. And subconsciously, that unnerves people.
Yeah.
Because they're in an environment they've never been in before.
We went to the quiet room in Guildhall the university.
Yeah.
They've got a quiet room in there, and it was one of the weirdest things ever. You could it was just like, it was almost, like when your ears pop.
Yes.
That's what it's like. It feels like that. It's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. So it's ironic because I think it's a quiet room where you're supposed to go and chill out and relax, and you go in there, it's like, hang on,
I'm not relaxed.
For some psychoacoustic reason. I don't quite get it.
It's like an airlock before you're being released into space.
Exactly. So there are some people that are weirded out by the psychoacoustic environment. There are some people who are fine until the red light comes on and it becomes apparent that I'm actually talking to them. In which case, you just have to, if they're. You have to be, it's the preparation before that. You try and make them feel as comfortable as they can be anyway. And I'm not. Most of them, I'm not holding to account. I'm not grilling. I'm not giving them a battering about anything. I just want to have a chat with them, like you guys. I want to find out something about them. And
so do you find that sometimes you have days where you literally just can't? Because obviously live on air, I struggle sometimes to find the words and just sort of keep the rhythm up, which is why, to be fair, like, there was the auditions the other day, wasn't it? The Radio Shropshire. Yeah. And I messaged out and I was just like, I said, you should go for it, definitely. And then I messaged my girlfriend separately and I was like, oh, should I go on it? She was like, yeah, nah. I was like, oh, yeah. So to be fair, like, I can do this without.
Yeah.
Because I think between us, we gel well together, and it's like the to and fro between us. But like, I think on my own, no good, because I wouldn't be able to find the words in the rhythm. I'll probably get used to it.
Exactly.
Yourself,
but doing it under pressure.
So do you find that there's days where you just can't?
Oh yeah.
Just
yes, actually, I mean, we are recording this on a Thursday, and I have a real thing about Thursdays. Thursdays it's so long since the last weekend, and it's not near enough to the next one. And I just, if something's going to be, if something's going to be a real 2-star effort, it's going to be a Thursday.
Yeah.
Although that having been said, yesterday morning, which was of course Wednesday, I was sitting there and I was just, I wasn't quite, not everything was quite coming together. And you have those days where you can't think of the words, or you can't find the words, or you can't get them out cleanly, or whatever. And I said off the air to Faith, who was the newsreader, I said, God, it really feels like a Wednesday. And she said, it is Wednesday. That'll be why then. I thought it was Tuesday. Yes, no. Sometimes the disconnect with.
So how do you deal with that then? Like, if you can't,
just have to do it.
You just talk.
Yeah. Well, no. You can. Sometimes you can hear people on the radio fall back onto certain tropes that they do a lot. And I try and do as few of those as possible. But sometimes they come in useful when, in a live situation, you're essentially filling for time.
Yeah.
Because on quite a few occasions, someone calls us. The way it works on the phone-in shows, they call us, we call them back. And it may be that when we call them back, it'll be 40 seconds, which is a long time, on live radio or whatever, before they're ready. There's no point in me starting another record, because then it'll be 3.5 minutes down the line.
Yeah.
And I want to keep up the flow of conversation about a particular topic. And so I just need to basically keep the ball in the air until this person actually comes on to talk to me. So you just have to, and you end up with about half a dozen things that you fall into when you do that. So that's just it. But otherwise, it is one. People think, how hard can it be? You sit in this like dark room,
box,
dark room, and you talk to people you can't see, and then that's it. Well, first off, there's a lot more to it than that before and afterwards, as you guys know.
Yes.
But also, it is actually incredibly stressful.
Yeah.
Because when it's live, you've got no idea what's going to happen next. A lot of the time, you don't know what's going to happen next. And you may find yourself talking to someone who is going to say something for which you're entirely unprepared, and you have to try not to be unprepared.
Yeah.
And so you're constantly your brain's split in two constantly. You're thinking 2 or 3 events ahead. You're looking at the clock. You're thinking, this is going to go on for how long? What am I going to do after that? What am I going to do after that?
You got your producer in your ear.
Exactly. Yeah, you got the producer in my ear, or messages coming up on the screen in front of me. And at the same time, I have to pay as full attention as I can to the person that I'm talking to, whilst thinking about all the other stuff. And you can't. It's not. It's a very sedentary job. It's not physically tiring, but you come off the air. It's like brain hurt.
Yeah,
you know.
And I feel that because there are the days, especially like when best examples are when I'm working at the prison on a bad day, because we do like bits of acting and stuff at the prison. And recently I was doing the prison break, and I was playing an ex drag artist from the TV. So I had the wig on, the makeup, and I was just proper like, what are you doing in my cell? I guess you just walk into anybody's room then, do you? Like, you know, and like on the bad days, because I've got this highly energetic, really, I throw tantrums and throw clothes across the wing and stuff like that. You know, on the bad days, you have to really put your all into it. And
Absolutely, yeah.
And it's for like 4 or 5 hours. I'll come home and I'm just exhausted because I've put a lot into that.
Yeah, exactly.
And, you know, I did go to the New Voices audition, and it was a really weird experience for me because they told us to write... to tell a story for a minute.
Yeah.
And this is what I do. This is what I do every week. You know, this is like, I think we've got so many things to say. And Shane was like, you should tell the story about stealing the handshake from the mayor. And I was like, yeah, that's a classic. That's great. So I wrote it down, and it was like, it was 1:20, but if I rushed through it, it was a minute. And I got in there, and it was Nick that was there. I've met him a couple of times, so I was comfortable. I've got to open my book. There was no headphones. I like listening to my own voice. I was kind of like, oh, this is weird. And then I was like, okay, here we go. I started reading. Then I missed where I was on the page, and so I had to backtrack. And then I had to I didn't get the story finished, and it was just like a jumbled up story and I was just like,
yeah.
Yeah, so
Take two.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. Yes.
And it's just nice being able to go, right, I need a wee. Pause.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, quite.
Come back and so we. So yeah, I do. I mean, I've always had respect for. I mean, one of my heroes growing up, but somebody I was always religiously listened to was Chris Moyles. Chris Moyles, he was great. I used to buy his books. I used to listen to his show religiously.
Yeah.
When he moved to the mornings, it was difficult because I had a job that I was working while he was on and stuff, you know, but I used to listen to him after school, and he had a really chaotic show.
Yes.
Absolute
He still does.
chaos.
To be fair, Radio X is pretty chaotic. And like that's where I sort of see if this sort of takes off. That's how I see like this sort of podcast becoming at some point, if it does get to that kind of level, because you've got that very much sort of like the group of people sat and they're all having a chat about various things. Got people ringing in. Yeah, it's a very sort of podcast-esque sort of setup, isn't it? It's not really like a sort of radio show where you sort of sat talking to one person.
You often find that the things on radio that sound most chaotic or sound like there's so many things going on are actually the most tightly produced of all. And there is a producer in the background who's keeping a very close. I can't imagine he's with Moyles. Anyone that can do like 20 minutes without playing a record at 6:30 in the morning about the fact that he's not been paid enough regularly. I can't imagine that he would take too much notice of a producer. But quite often the stuff that sounds the most chaotic is the most tightly produced of all.
Yeah, I guess. Is there like a ratio of producer to host type thing, or is there something going on there where you've got to keep an eye on so many people's levels and this? You know,
it's nice to think so. But I mean, for me, the show team is me. Doing the show, and I'm driving the desk because I'm doing all the tech side of it, and Tim, who is the producer and who is, you know, technically in charge, he's the one who officially gets the rap if I do anything wrong, and he has an assistant sitting with him in the next door studio. But on bigger on network stations, then you'll have maybe a producer per segment, and you might have 4 segments in a in a show. So you'll have one person whose job is their job is to absolutely nail that. Is to make sure that segment is as good as it can possibly be. They've got the right guests, they got them in quality, they got not on the phone, they know what's going to happen. And that is really that's a tremendous skill. And you think, well, how hard can it be to be responsible for getting half an hour of radio on the air?
Yeah,
but really hard.
It's quite a lot involved. A lot of moving parts
on national radio. Yeah, there are a lot of moving parts that you've got to try and keep in the same place.
Do you find yourself? I mean, not mentioning any names. Do you find yourself finding your favourite producers, the ones that like you can work with?
You walk into work and you're like, oh, thank God, I've got them.
It's when I've got to say here, we have a fantastic team at BBC Radio Shropshire.
Yeah,
we've got a really hugely supportive management team. And they get us basically, and they get what we're trying to do, and they get what the people from Shropshire want, and they get how we're going to do it. And one of the ways of getting that is to team people up really sympathetically. and that's something that they're really good at. So Tim and I have been working together. He's been my producer for like 4.5 years now, I suppose, or 4 or 5 years. And when they and so they will shuffle teams around, and then when they find a fit that works really well, then where people get complementary skills and complementary qualities, then they'll stick with that, and that'll be what they'll go with, unless someone gets a job somewhere else, or there's some disruption or something else goes awry, then they won't. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. If it can be improved, then improve it. But if it's not broke, don't fix it.
That's the qualities of being a good manager, though, isn't it? Is knowing your team and knowing what works the best and the right combination in various different...
It's very rare you get that in a
It is. It really is. And that's why when you do get a manager that has that skill and really takes note of what they've got, what they've got in the deck kind of thing, and they know what cards to play and when to play it. That's the side of a good manager, And
there's the other side to being on radio as well, is the things you get up to on the outside of the world. And I noticed on your Twitter, you're very feisty on Twitter. I love your Twitter. It's so good. Because you get somebody being a numpty and John would be like, very politely, you're being a numpty,
I will. For the good of my mental health, I've been doing that less now.
Yeah.
Because it can actually take over your life.
Yes.
And now I've tried to. I've been on Twitter for 10 years, I think, for almost since it started. And I'm only now getting the hang of certain aspects of it. One is, and there's this campaign against online hate. I can't remember what it's actually called, but which is the idea that don't feed the trolls. If you've got someone who is trolling you, then don't chuck anything back. Don't bother. And one really interesting thing about that, and this is something that I used to do all the time, and I've stopped doing it now, is if you see someone saying something utterly stupid or offensive or whatever, don't retweet it with your own comment, because that amplifies what they're saying.
Yeah.
And this works on other social media as well. And that means the logarithms just look at the fact that offensive comment's being retweeted. The algorithms think, oh, this must be really good. We'll bump that up. And so then that becomes really popular. So you end up actually amplifying the thing that you're trying to mute.
Yeah.
So and then I did actually used to from time to time. I have several standing searches on. I use TweetDeck for Twitter, and you can save some searches on it. And I've got some on there that for particular groups of words, and I've actually reduced the number. I used to have some that looked out in particular for what people were saying about particular topics or about particular subjects, and it was almost like I was the vulture on the fence, waiting for someone to say something and I could leap in on. I thought, why? Is the point?
Yeah.
I mean, before social media, you still get them on some websites, the forum thing,
chat rooms and stuff,
chat rooms and forums, and I used to get involved in a couple of those, and I just thought, why am I wasting my time with these people?
Yeah,
hunting an argument. Almost,
exactly.
It?
Exactly. Because you're not going to change their mind.
No,
they don't really care what you think. They're only in it.
They probably don't even
think
what they're actually putting either.
No. And the number of times, the rubbish people put on social media. I'm carefully. I know this is quite informal, but I'm editing my language. The stuff people put on social media about the BBC is nuts. Utterly nuts. And you think, how can... sometimes the best I can do is respond to them and just say, I'm sorry, your television is broken. If you think that's the case, that's just not true. So, and so I now don't go looking for that anymore. If someone says something, I don't amplify it. And I try to do much more positive stuff and celebratory stuff, and this is true for the show as well. And this is what you guys do. Of course, there are some people that set up podcasts about their particular area because they want to moan about things, and because they just think because they just want to pick fights with people. And one of the great things about Shrewsbury Biscuit is that you don't do that. Is that you're celebrating, you're getting interesting people on, you're getting creative people on, you're getting, and you're celebrating the great people that are in Shrewsbury.
I feel like the world needs a lot more of that. And
Absolutely.
We wanted to give Shrewsbury like a platform,
Yeah.
But with the whole social media thing, I feel like something needs to be done. Something needs to be done because, like, I'm trying to stay away from it. Shane can be vouch for this because sometimes Shane will share something, and one of his mates will be like, and I'd be like, and it'd just be his back into it, and just I go back away from it, and I just had this horrible taste in my mouth.
What he hasn't noticed is that I just tend to post it and then sit back and watch.
Yeah,
oh, right. So I'm one of those.
Well, you lob the brick into the mill pond and then just sit and watch the ducks fly off. I'm not on Facebook. I have to be on Facebook for one particular reason, which is that my partner Janie and I, we run a mental health drop-in support group called
That's awesome.
Called Pop-Up Chat Together, and we can't afford a website for it because it's all voluntary. So the only way so it has a Facebook page. And I can't come off Facebook completely because otherwise I wouldn't be able to put anything on there. So that's the only reason I'm still on Facebook. But I don't do anything else on Facebook. I came off Facebook because I was on one local group, and I found I was getting into the most ridiculous arguments about things. There was one which was, what was it? Oh yeah. I never cease to be amazed about how people can extend an argument about one thing beyond all reasonable. Like, I mean, for example, if you want to chuck one of your bricks in the mill pond, Shane, just go on Facebook and call the quarry Park, and then brace yourself for all the people who've lived here longer than we have to say, no, it's just a quarry.
Yeah,
there just happens to be a park,
and it happens to be a park in a quarry, and then you get someone else coming back saying, yeah, but when you got tourists coming, you would tell them to go to a quarry. Why would you do that? And it goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
And there was one where people were. I was actually falling out with people because someone posted a picture of the old Shire Hall, which used to be, it was this massive granite building or sandstone building, which was down the side of the square, where Starbucks is at one end. Job centres at the other, Princess Houses now.
Yeah.
And it was the most ugly and forbidding early 19th century thing. And it was, and because this is what happens on those groups, people were saying, oh, it's a shame they knocked it down. And I said, no, actually, because if you look at it, it's really, there's no glass in it. And now what's replaced it, it's not very pretty, but it's on a human scale, and there's glass at face level, and you can see actual human beings. And it doesn't make you feel like the people that are in charge of the town are hiding away in their castle. And that didn't go down well.
No.
And if people can start a fight over that, I just think, I don't want to be part of this.
People they do get territorial over there.
Yeah, they do.
And that building that's there now does look like a World War II pillbox.
It does. Yeah, but I still contend that it's actually more human, so it's friendlier.
Yeah.
The other one, and the absolute,
not Shire Hall. I mean the one that's Starbucks. I mean that.
Oh yes, exactly. Yeah. And that's the other, and the other absolute classic in this department is because I love the Market Hall. I love that.
Yeah, it's one of our favourite places.
Recorded there. It's one of your favourite places, one of my favourite places. I think it's a fantastic place. And I actually like the design of it as well. I actually quite like the fact that it's 1960s. It's a well-executed example of 1960s architecture. But you get people saying, oh, isn't it a shame they knocked down that? Well, no, the old one looked like an absolutely massive Victorian toilet.
Yeah.
It just looked like a huge Victorian and it looked like the sort of public convenience that used to deface the centre of towns, only on a massive scale. And so I don't think it is a shame that they knocked that down. If you go to Shropshire Archives, you can find pictures. I was going to hit me stride now. I'll stop on this in a minute. Don't worry. That's all right. Go to Shropshire Archives, you can find pictures of the preparation, because this is so long ago. It's so recently. The actual photographs of the preparation of the ground to build the Victorian Market Hall, and so you have loads of pictures of people knocking down half-timber, Tudor and medieval half-timber cottages.
Oh, wow.
These pictures still exist. And it's just like, actually, no, if you want to complain that something's gone,
do that. Yeah.
And the thing is, like, people are so attached to their opinions as well.
Yeah, they are.
And you know what? I mean, live, it must be terrible when this happens. But I got thrown off my guard. I got thrown under the bus. We were talking to this guy on the other show about. He does a Star Wars. It's called The Outer Rim. Go search it. It's really good. It's a Star Wars based web series that he does. I won't mention his name. And I started talking about the Greta Thunberg thing and the riot, not the riot, the protest thing I shared and the hate I was getting from that.
That was a lot, wasn't it? Yeah.
And he was like, "Well, I agree with him." And I was like,
"Sorry, what
was that now?" And he was like, "Climate change is a myth," and I was just like, "Oh, no."
Spacebar. Get off.
So I gave him my piece, he gave me his piece, and then Tom was just my other co-host was just sat there like, because nobody was backing down from their opinion. It's crazy.
And you won't, and you're not going to change that person's mind. And that person, subconsciously or consciously, he feels like he's made an impact because he's landed one on you.
Yeah.
As far as that, because he's got you riled up. I think the Greta Thunberg thing is fascinating. It's just because all the people that are really angry about her are men.
Yes.
And that's fascinating.
Yeah.
I think it's
powerful.
It's almost like an episode of Big Brother. Greta goes to
Yeah, quite.
Day 17.
Yeah.
Jeremy Clarkson while he waves his hairy fist at Greta Thunberg.
Lord help me.
Has that ever happened to you on the show? Though, has somebody ever come on and they've gone, "Oh yeah," and you've gone, "Okay, thank you, Sally, for joining us now," and they've gone, "The Tories are a bunch of," or anything like that.
Mercifully not. No, not quite that. But I have had people who said just complete and utter nonsense. Which and one of the reasons, I mean, Tim, the producer, is legally responsible for this stuff as well, apart from anything else. Which means that if you've got someone who, but I'm the one that's driving the desk. I've got the fingers on the faders, and so if I hear someone who's edging towards something that could potentially be incitement to racial hatred, for example, and I have had that a couple of times, then you just have to be prepared to get out of it. It's much more likely that someone will say something that's potentially defamatory or that they can't back up or whatever, in which case it's my job to ask them to back it up.
Yeah.
Or they'll say something about someone else and I have to point out that that might be their interpretation of what's going on, but that's not necessarily
slander.
Well, exactly. Yeah, quite. Yeah. Because it is libel. And it's a published libel, and as the publishers, we are responsible.
Especially when it's attached to the BBC.
Yeah, exactly. So you have. And there have been, mercifully, the BBC doesn't, because we get proper training. This doesn't happen so often, but the number of times that it's happened in, let's say, other sectors of
media.
of the media.
Yeah.
There was one where there are going to be some people who really hate to be reminded of this. There was one where I think it was the Sower murders trial, and Ian Huntley was on trial, and off the back of a news bulletin at 8:00 in the morning, some commercial radio presenters just said, "Well, he's obviously guilty, isn't he?"
Yeah,
quite. And there've been a couple of occasions like that, and the management of the radio station and have been hauled up in court,
really,
before the judge and said, "Look, you're prejudicing the trial," and the idea that people can go on the radio without actually being trained in the basic elements of media law, it boggles the mind.
Which is why I found it fascinating how they went, "Russell Brand, here you go, here's a microphone," and go, and expected nothing wrong to go happen with Russell Brand.
Yeah.
Because his podcast is amazing, but that's a podcast, right?
Yes.
When you're phone, what was it? Was it Radio X? What radio station was he with when he did that?
He did the phone call to Andrew Sachs.
Thing.
That was Radio 2.
Was that Radio?
Not only was that BBC Radio 2, but that was pre-recorded too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
And one of the things that you can say about the BBC is that it learns from its mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that was absolutely one of them. And as a result of that, anything that was pre-recorded, anything that was pre-recorded and was longer than 21 minutes, so that would be a long feature in an ordinary program, had to be listened to by someone in a position of authority before it went out, and it had to be ticked off, and they had to check it against, and that kind of thing. And that still happens. We still have to, if you're recording something, if you're recording a program, then there's a fair amount of paper. Well, it's online now, but of compliance paperwork to make sure stuff like that doesn't happen again.
Yeah, and that's good. That's really good. I mean, one of my favourite things was Scott Mills when he used to ring up people, like ex-boyfriends and things like that. That was really, he's so funny. He's a very, very cheeky guy. I love Scott Mills. So with you guys, I know you're based at BBC Shropshire. Like, do you guys get to move around, go to different stations, meet other hosts, presenters?
Yeah, sometimes. It used to happen more. Doesn't happen so much now, but it does. But online a lot of the time, actually.
Yeah,
okay. But you get to meet up. You know who the other people doing that kind of job are, really. So
I mean, I get it. I mean, like we record shows for people in America. I do it every week. And people. I mean, now I fixed his microphone. I managed to get it as though Tom sounds as though he's sat like you guys are now.
Yeah.
It sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
What I was going to ask is this coupling, this grouping up of local radio stations that aren't BBC. So they've all become under the same umbrella now. They're not. It's not like a local thing anymore. It's all kind of very commercialized and things like that. Have you guys had an impact because of that?
It can only be good for us.
Exactly. Yeah.
It can only be good for us because if you want something that's genuinely local, then the place to go now is BBC Local Radio or a community station. And some community stations are absolutely great. Some community stations are less good. But a lot of them are, in fairness, a lot of community stations run on volunteers. And so they may not be the highest professional standards, but boy, they're really committed to it, and they do a really great job.
Yeah, I used to work for one. I used to do Alex's Entertainment Buzz, and I used to have 8 minutes where I'd be like, and in the news today.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but you really cared about it, right?
Yeah,
and all the people around you really cared about it, and that was part of the thing about it. But I mean, again, that radio station I mentioned previously, that was the 21st ever commercial radio station, was in Coventry, and it served Coventry and South Leicestershire. And we were entirely unique and self-contained. And down the road there was a radio station, but there's BRMB in Birmingham. Down the road from that there was the Beacon in Wolverhampton, and we were all different, and we were all dedicated to doing exactly what the people on our patches wanted. And then as soon as the regulation got lighter and the money guys in suits thought, we can consolidate here. We can put everything on one site, and then it just got less and less local, and now it's hardly local at all. I mean, it's almost, I could barely believe that a city the size and importance of Coventry, with Coventry's history and its industrial heritage and everything, and with a constantly changing population, and it's constantly growing, that could be without a top-line commercial radio station. Oh, it's unbelievable.
I've got ideas. I'll talk to you off air.
Okay.
I'll talk to you off air, but I do have ideas because this almost synergy of radio stations has got my blood boiling, really, because you're right. People do need.
Yeah, absolutely.
And some people prefer not to listen to the BBC. No disrespect.
And do you know what?
Some people,
we've actually experienced it already with doing the Biscuit. Is that we've had people turning up to events and literally saying, "Oh, is this where this is happening?" And then we're like, "No." They're like, "Yeah." So, I didn't know it's happening. We heard it on the Biscuit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and we've literally had that, haven't we?
Yeah,
people turned up to places
a few times.
And
that's a fantastic thing.
Yeah,
and that's great.
And you lose that if you don't have that. Community kind of
exactly. And if you're being served by a radio station from 30, 50, 100, 150 miles away, then the person who's on the air doesn't know about.
They can't cover everything, can they?
They don't know about the topography. They don't know about that North Shropshire's flat and South Shropshire's hilly, for example.
Yeah.
Just basic stuff like that. So yeah,
and I think if we could turn the Biscuit into like a radio station, that would be quite
amazing.
Cool. Yeah, because I like this idea of a very intricately detailed show that talks about certain stalls in the market hall that talk about reeking whiskies, that talk about the flower show, they talk about this,
Shropshire Brewery, and
things like that. Because
that Louvre chocolate,
and I guess that's where your cold seat comes in, And,
yes.
Get to, I guess you get to speak to some really interesting people.
Oh, I couldn't believe. Well, we started doing it when Tim took over producing the show. So about 4 years ago, and we thought, this will run for about 6 months, and we'll run out of people. 4.5 years on, we've still got a really long list of people that we've already booked or that we want to get on. I have met some absolutely incredible people. There's a bloke called Mark O'Shea who was in the studio talking about something else. And this is going to be, you're going to have to cut this out. You're going to have to cut this bit out because he's at Shropshire Wildlife Trust tomorrow, and he is like Crocodile Dundee and Indiana Jones rolled into one.
Really?
He's an amazing. He's a professor of herpetology. He's a snake expert. Okay, we can cut back into this now.
I'm going to leave it in.
Fair enough. But he's doing a talk about it. He's a snake expert, and snakes are his thing. And he wears the big bush hat and the khaki vest and everything, and he's got long white hair and a massive beard, and he's just like he's absolutely such a character.
I do recognise the name for some reason.
He's done stuff on TV, and he's like the snake guy, and he's written the Book of Snakes, and he's the most fantastic storyteller, not least because he has the most fantastic stories to tell, some of which are utterly terrifying, about looking king cobras in the eye, and what it was like when I caught my first black mamba, and this kind of thing. You were
like what?
You
caught a what?
Absolutely, he's absolutely jaw dropping. Some of the people in some of the really memorable cool seats have been people who've been who you wouldn't necessarily think twice about. There's a bloke called Norman, who I think he was one of the first half dozen that we had, and he'd been a plumber and central heating engineer in South Shropshire for the last part of his working life. But the first part of his working life, he was a freelance sound engineer, sound designer, working in the British film industry, and he was an Oscar winner. And quite, and I think it's Thunderball, the Bond film where Oddjob has the bowler hat with the razor blades around the outside.
He throws it.
Yeah, everyone knows the scene. Yeah. He throws it across the room, and you hear this whooshing sound, and it moves. It pans in stereo left to right, and there it goes. And he was the guy. He basically got the Oscar for the sound design on that film, and that was one of the things that clinched it for him. and he'd done all sorts of things. He'd worked on so many huge films, and then he just got fed up with being a freelance, and he thought, I don't want to do this anymore. So he moved to Shropshire, retrained as a heating engineer, and was going around fixing people's boilers, and then going home to this Oscar statuette. He brought his Oscar in. And I've actually held an Oscar statuette. He brought his Oscar in, and it was absolutely incredible.
It's amazing how people hold themselves. Phil Davis was the guy we spoke to a comic He was holding doors open for us all the whole weekend, and
he was fetching people in for us. And at one point, we were stood outside. We had a bit of a break, and he was just come up and he was just stood there talking to me about how there was 2 or 3 comic book artists who was looking at somebody's portfolio of their own work, and they were sort of giving a few tips. Charlie Ardlog goes over and he looks over the shoulder and he starts chipping in as well. You're talking millions of pounds worth of comic book artists all stood around this table. Yeah. Phil stood there and he sort of stood next to me. He's going like, "There's some money's worth there, isn't there?" And we're just talking about, I didn't really know who he was, to be honest. He turned out to be the writer for Go Jetters. Yeah. And he'd done all this work on kids' TV programs and stuff. And once I found this out, I was like, "Oh, why aren't you on the podcast?"
Yeah. What are you doing? Bringing people in, holding doors. I just thought he was there to help out. I didn't realise.
Such a nice guy, though.
Exactly.
But you wouldn't tell.
No, absolutely. No, you wouldn't know. And that's we're obviously on the same page as this. We love people like that.
Yeah.
People who are just cool but don't make anything of it.
Yeah.
And are just naturally interesting and fun to talk to, and some people are just hilarious to spend time with. I mean, one of the cool seats. So I love doing having musicians in the cool seat. And a couple of those were Miles Hunt from the Wonder Stuff, who's just hysterically funny. and a really, really lovely bloke. And Fuzz Townsend, off Car SOS. He lives in Bishop's Castle, and was the only man I've ever met who's been the drummer in a band that was named after a drum machine, Bentley Rhythm Ace, which seemed a bit weird, but he was such a lovely guy. And
you got Peter Postlethwaite as well, who used to live in Bishop's Castle. And my dad was saying he's fishing on a pool once, and his car pulled up behind him, and he said, "You caught much?" Dad was like, "No, not much. You do carry on." Yeah. And he hears the door going, and sort of Dad didn't think much of it. Next thing, come around the side of his umbrella kind of thing, like, it was Peter Postlethwaite. Yeah. And he was just like, hello. Yeah, exactly. He sat next to him, and had a coffee with him, and he was just chatting about the pool and stuff, like he was just the average Joe. And you kind of forget, really, don't you? Like when you see people in the media and on telly and that kind of stuff, you forget that they're just normal people.
Absolutely.
And that's the lesson I learned from a couple of people, like Charlie Adlard, who came around here like you did, and I was just like, and he was just like,
internationally famous man coming in my house.
All right, guys.
Yeah,
and I'm just like, hi, just scouting for girls. I was kind of like, oh, they're going to be like, oh, who wants to speak to us today? But
they're just like, how you doing?
You just
exactly.
Like you, for example. You're from the BBC, and you sat in my kitchen just chilling with us, and you've been a great guest.
Well, it's also like people's pasts and what they've been through. Like you said, like with the guy with the heating engineer and stuff. Yeah. People's past has always fascinated me, which is where the memoirs of Fallopian come in. Yeah. And that's where that sort of come from, the idea of that. And I was driving, at the time I was doing this job, I was literally driving to and from London every day. So I was doing a lot of driving. Really? And I've said it a lot on the show, so, apologies for repeating myself again. But, I knew I would work nights. So I knew at like 3:30 in the morning he was going to be awake. So I was like, messaging. I was like, answer your phone. He rings me up and he was just like, what do you want? Like, what's wrong with you? Like, why are you awake? And I was like, I've had this amazing idea. And it was Memoirs of Fallopian. It just come to me. Yeah. Just out of nowhere, And the idea of it was that, with regards to Shrewsbury and like the Shrewsbury's history, I hear my dad talking a lot about the modern rocker days and that kind of stuff. Yeah. But then beyond that, my nan, she's lived in Shrewsbury. Well, lived in Shrewsbury all her life, and the memories that she had is gone now, forever. Yeah. And that's sort of starting to come to me a bit. We're like, hold on a minute, a lot of this stuff is just disappearing. Like for example, on a broader spectrum, the last person that was alive who was on the Titanic is now died. So that's it now. Yeah. It's all gone. Yeah, you're never going to get anything back.
The last connection you've got with
exactly.
That is gone now.
So we're getting to the point now where a lot of the history is just starting to dwindle away. Yeah. So that's where the Memoirs of Fallopian come from.
You're really passionate about this, and I did write to the BBC, and I was like, can we come on and maybe reach out, so some sort of appeal for people to come forward and just sit and talk with like you are.
All I want it to be is just how I said it about it in the past is when you get your granddad during the war when I was a lad, and you think, oh God, here it goes again. Like I've heard the story about 20 million times. I want to hear it. Exactly. I haven't heard it.
Just because someone's heard it before.
Exactly, and I think
that doesn't mean no one else wants to hear it.
Exactly. I think that with the sort of inverted brackets, elders of our families, we kind of just get used to it, and we don't appreciate what
and
they've
you
been
don't know
through.
what you got till it's gone,
Exactly.
and then you suddenly realise, you really wish you'd spoken to someone about something.
I mean, my granddad was born in 1901. Yeah. Right, he was a relatively old dad when he had my dad. And one thing, it come to my head actually randomly today in the office. That's why I just brought it up. I can remember my dad telling me that he can remember his dad telling my nan, so my dad's my nan, one time over the breakfast table whilst reading the newspaper, and he just went, "Oh, Buffalo." No, sorry, I got that wrong. Apologies. Okay. It was my granddad's dad.
Yes,
can remember saying to my granddad's mum that Buffalo Bill's been shot. Yeah, he read it in the newspaper. Yeah, and I was just like, what?
It's a direct connection. I mean, one of the things, and I could not agree with you emotionally. I think it's really important that that if you've got the chance to talk to someone who's got memories, it doesn't have to be anything hugely significant. No. It's just something that's important to your family or that's important to them. That get it down and record it.
The idea is that it's supposed to once it starts going, I think it will take off, because when people start listening, somebody will come in and start talking about like the modern rocker days, the things that happened, things they saw, names of people and that kind of stuff. And all of a sudden somebody will go, I remember that.
Yes.
And it's for different perspectives. So then that person will come on and start talking about that, which then spark off another bit of...
Fills in different bits.
And then you'll start piecing together all bits of different experiences from different people, from different areas, and different backgrounds and stuff. And it'll still create like a massive image of the past.
How things used to be.
Yeah, exactly.
A 3D image.
Exactly.
Well, people going, that Jim Hawkins didn't know what he was on about. That old market hall was fantastic.
Probably. That could get a bit awkward. Yeah. But I mean, one of the things that I've always loved is old photographs and old films, certainly, but particularly old audio recordings, old sound recordings. And I get more than a bit anarchy about it. But for example, there was something that the British Library has a lot of these, and blogs about them a few times. And there was one who there was someone who. That was the voice, but in short, it was the voice of someone who was born 200 years ago, and you think you can actually hear the voice of someone that was born 200 years ago. That's an absolutely mind-blowing thing to me. And there's this thing that we do on the show. It's only an occasional thing because there's only so much content about it that you can do something with, but called Found Sound. Where get people who've got old tapes, old records, things that of members of their family or whatever, and we get the people who own that audio to tell the story of the of what's on the recording. And we've had some fantastic stuff. There was a woman called Sam who had a whole bunch of reel-to-reel tapes, little 3-inch reel-to-reel tapes. Her dad was in the forces and was stationed in Singapore. Her mum was back here in this country with living alone with 3 kids in Plymouth. And they communicated with these tape letters. So she would just put a little reel of tape on, record what was going on. And you could hear the kids in the background, and you could hear doorbell ringing, whatever. And she would send it off, and her husband would record something and send it back. She's still got some of these. This is from before she was born, so this is the mid-60s. So we had Sam on telling the story and explaining what there was. There was someone who found a whole bunch of cassettes that every year on Christmas Day, her granddad used to record a cassette of everyone that was around, even if it was just kids telling jokes. They got those. But it started off with a chance discovery, which was the guy. And two friends of mine, lovely people, Charlie and Moretta Jarrett. He, at the age of 18, they fell in love in their late teens. She moved to Malta with her family. And he was in London, a trainee lawyer, and bereft. And they used to have these machines on, like photo booth machines, where you could go in and record your voice or record something. And they used to have them at railway stations. And he went into this little booth on Charing Cross railway station. He'd written a poem for her to express how desolate he was that she was in Malta. And he puts his shilling in or whatever, presses the button, and it cuts it direct to disc. Cuts it straight to an acetate record, which then comes out of a slot in an envelope, and he posted it off to her, and he still got it. So we played that, and he told the story of how they're still together after all these years. But the very first one we did, we found one of a series of 78s that was recorded by the British Association of Amateur Drama Societies or something, and they'd gone round the entire country recording local people's accents. So if anyone was trying to do a local accent, they knew what it sounded like. And there's only 3.5 minutes of each one because it's one side of a 78. So one side of a 78 is a bloke called Edward Benbow, who was recorded in Worthing. And we played the 78, and it's this guy recorded in 1935, I think.
Wow,
I know he's recorded at a time when some houses in Worthing didn't have electricity. So they brought this recording machine to Worthing, recorded this guy who was a local amateur actor, and we found his daughter, and we found his. And her family, and we tracked down and we found someone. There's someone still in the village of Worthing. Well, there certainly was when we recorded it. Who was in his 90s, who went to school with this guy, and it was just a dusty 78 from from a junk shop, and we actually brought this guy back to life. Essentially, absolutely fascinating. I love that kind of thing. And as you were saying, Shane, it's rescuing that from being lost.
Absolutely.
And, that's what we're doing with this show. That's what you guys do with the radio. And, that's really hit me in the feels, because we used to make our own little radio stations with, sorry for people we stole music from, but we used to record we was like, okay, and here's Michael Jackson with Bad. And we pressed record, but then, that was, and then we mess around, play around. And if I could listen to one of those tapes now, I wonder what the reaction would be, because I don't know if I'd be sad. It'd probably make me cry. In all honesty, I cry at Batman.
Funny enough, we used to pretend to do news. We used to make up news, write it down on a piece of paper, and we used to sit on the table, and we used to have an old, proper on your shoulder video camera that had a stand.
Oh, wow.
And when I was growing up, my dad picked up from a boot sale or something, probably, whatever. And he used to take proper full VHS tapes, And we used to sit and pretend to do the news. And my brothers and sisters were just like, for God's sake. They were never really into it. And I used to be like, no, you're doing it wrong. It's your bit. Come on.
But if you find those, then
that'd be great. I want a copy.
Exactly. There's your YouTube channel.
That's it,
So, Jim, I want to talk about what you do with mental health, because I think it's really important. Do you want to give what you do a shout out, and let people know where to find it?
Thank you. I will do. Mental health is something that that people didn't really used to talk about, and it's still something that people don't talk about as much as they should. I don't feel
it's getting better. It's getting
much better. It's getting much better. But some people still feel really wary about talking about their mental health. I used to be like that. I used to be quite open about it with friends, and I wasn't so much on the radio. And then it just got to the point where I couldn't not, so I just wanted to talk about it. But there's this thing that happens every February, which is organised by Time to Change, which is an umbrella organisation of 4 or 5 different mental health charities, called Time to Talk Day. The idea of Time to Talk Day is that it's an opportunity, a kind of nudge, if you like, to have a conversation about mental health. And for one Time to Talk Day, about 5 years ago, I was trying to think what could I do. This was nothing to do with radio. It wasn't anything to do with the show. I wasn't going to record anything, nothing like that. So I just thought, and I put it on. I think I put it on Facebook, or actually I can't remember how I publicised it now. But anyway, I was just going to sit in at a table in the corner of the Old Market Hall Cafe, and I just had a few leaflets from Time to Change and stuff, and I just let it be known, as I say, I can't remember how, that if someone wanted to come along and just have a chat about mental health, then there'd be someone with no clinical expertise, but with lived experience, me, there to talk about it. And so it started off like that. And I actually had, I think 4 or 5 people come out, including one woman who felt so embarrassed about the medication she was on that she kind of just leaned in and whispered it across the table to me, and she'd never told anybody else about what she was on, and it was an antipsychotic, and at that time, I was actually on the same thing. I said, no, look, I'm on that time taking that too. It's fine. It helps you. It helps you get through things. I actually had to stop taking it because it had this effect on me where I was on holiday for 14 hours. It was too effective, and so I could only take it on Friday afternoons.
I used to take citalopram, and I think what I was going through at the time was very environmental. It's something that wasn't permanent.
Yeah.
Because and I explained to the doctor, and he was like, I don't know where that's come from, but I was walking down the middle aisle at Asda where I used to work, and everything just went really bright and really
really intense. Yes,
and I was just like, wow, I think I need to stop taking these now, and I did, and I managed to work my way out of the situation I was in. That's quite cool. But
but you do find yourself experiencing the work quite intensely or something. But after that Time to Talk Day, my other half, Janie, who's an opera singer, and who also has lived experience of mental health issues, said, well, that actually went really well. Wouldn't it be great if we could do something like that? So we thought, well, something equally relaxed and laid back. And so we thought, okay, let's try and think of what we can do. So we came up with, it's a slightly clumsy name, but it was actually tied in with At the time, everyone was doing pop-up shops, so pop-up was the thing. And it was also tied in with an organisation called Together, which is no longer really going so much, and certainly we're no longer as involved with it. And so we looked at a way of doing basically a time to talk day every month. So we've got pop-up chat together. It's every first Saturday of every month. So actually, this will be, unless you're going to put this out in the next 36 hours, this will be useless. But it's this coming Saturday morning, if you want to tell anyone about it. And it's at Palmer's, which is the not-for-profit coffee house in the Old Baptist Church on Claremont Street.
Yeah.
11 till 1, and it's not a membership group. It's not, you don't sign in. It's not anything about. There's no guest speakers. There's no professional experts. It's just, and you don't have to talk about mental health. A lot of the time we talk about dogs because a lot of people love dogs. But it's something where if you have lived experience of mental health issues, then just, or if you know someone who does, because there's not that much support around for the families and partners of people who've got mental health issues, then just come and hang out with us, have a coffee and a cake, have a chat.
That's really, really good.
It is good.
And it goes up, it varies sometimes. Some months we'll get a couple of dozen people, some months we'll get half a dozen. But everyone's really glad to be there.
Yeah.
And we're really glad to do it.
Well, part of the whole mental health, depression and anxiety kind of bubble is the you find yourself closed off. You do struggle to go and mix with people. And actually, when I was going through my difficulties, one of the main things, I was very much aware of this. And all I wanted to do was to shut myself in my room and not do anything. You know, and I made a point. I knew that if I got into that habit, it would continue.
Yeah, you would never ever come out.
Yeah, exactly. And so I made a point of making myself. I was with people all the time and positive people.
Yes.
And sometimes I just turn up to my mate's house, and on particularly bad days, I just turn up, and they would be like, you open the door, like, "Hello, you're all right?" And I'm just like, "No."
Yeah, quite.
And they'll be like, "Oh, okay." And then they'll just invite me in. You won't mind me saying it. My mate Matt, who used to live down the road from where I used to live, and he used to just literally walk in and you go, "Do you want a brew?" And I'm like, yeah. And he'll sit down and he'll be sorting out his daughter, just doing whatever he's doing. I just sit in his house just because it was with someone,
Exactly.
And then he'd sit down and he'd go, "Playing Call of Duty for a bit."
Yeah.
And I'm like, you never once mentioned it.
No,
ever.
exactly.
Never once mentioned it.
He knows why you're there.
And so we'd play on Call of Duty for a bit. Eventually, sometimes, he'd sort of sit there and be like, "Do you want to talk about it?" And I'm like, "No."
Yeah.
Like, okay,
fair enough.
Carry on playing COD.
Yeah, exactly. Put the kettle on again.
Yeah.
And that is so valuable. And having friends that you can do that with makes such a difference. Because I have, and I'm really great. I'm really, really glad of it. If you want to give us a bit of a shove, you can find Pop-Up Chat Together on Facebook, which is how we do all our stuff. We're also at Chat Together on Twitter, and it's essentially first Saturday of every month. And in Palmer's, 11 o'clock in the morning till about 1 o'clock.
I think I follow you on Twitter and the Facebook.
Feel free to come along, because there's all sorts of people there. And there's some dogs too, which is nice.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah. Maybe.
All right, that's the king of the dogs thing. I
do like dogs. I like dogs. I'm more of a dog person than a cat dog.
Oh, right, and me.
I think some cats I'm a bit wary of. Like that Paul's Cafe, I'd probably be a bit like, "What are you looking at?"
I've not been in there. Have you been in?
No. I need to get in there. I've been to Nerdy. You can play with the
They're permanently in alpha mode, aren't they, cats? I just don't. I don't trust them.
Can I give it a plug for something else at this?
Of course you can. Yeah.
On this subject, I'm also patron of Shropshire Cat Rescue. I'm not entirely sure how I ended up as patron of Shropshire Cat Rescue, but I am. And I no longer have a cat because a cat passed away about 6 months ago. But I'm still patron of Shropshire Cat Rescue, who have this amazing place up at Lith Hill.
Yes, I've been up there. It's brilliant.
And they have cats. They got pigs and goats and all sorts.
I need to get there because they were messaging me a while back. You can come round, just do a Biscuit episode there. And I was like, yeah, absolutely, we'll do it. And then what happens is I'll get like Phil Gillum will come in, or this will come in, or the flower show, and everything. It doesn't get pushed back, but it's like, you have
I just haven't got around to it yet.
Yeah. And so I would definitely love to do that.
They are lovely people. They're almost absurdly devoted to cats, and it's a lovely place to be.
Yeah. We will get there. And,
I've forgotten her name. Who's the owner? Marion. That was it.
That's it.
She's lovely as well.
Yes,
such a lovely woman. Yeah. And she has put a lot into that cat rescue.
We'll get her on. So I apologize to the guys. I mean, they talk to me on Twitter and all sorts. They're lovely people. And now we've scrapped our four show a week schedule. We can get you in even more now, because now we're just like, we'll just do shows whenever. Okay, we've got the minimum 4, because that's how many people are coming to us. It's crazy.
Exactly. And that's tremendous, isn't it?
It's crazy. Fantastic. And like, we don't get paid.
Literally.
Exactly.
I'm just so happy everybody's talking about this and what. That was the goal.
The difficulty is obviously we do have to work at the same time. I work full time. I'm working every day, and like
I work full time too.
To do 4 of the
only 3 days.
30 nowadays.
Quite exactly. It all adds up. However many days it is, it's long days. And how do you find the time to do? I mean, because it's not just recording it. You've got to edit it, you've got to put it together, you've got to get it up there.
It's difficult.
I'm a very passionate guy. I love doing.
He's a lot more. You do a lot more work than I do. In all fairness, I just sort of turn up.
The 40-minute interview I did with John Wagner a couple of weeks ago was really it was an amazing interview. But I opened it up on Audacity and I shrunk it right down. I was like, because he's a broad Scot, and he's got this
amazing voice.
Yes, he's got, but sometimes he brings it right down here, and that does nothing for the audio. And then he brings it right back up, and then so you got these really loud bits and these really low bits. So you can't just like drag it across, bring it all up, because then the loud bits are too loud. So it took me 2.5 hours to edit 40-minute piece. And I was just like, that's what it is. That is what it is.
Yeah.
There's an art to it.
You can compress it.
Yeah, I
do. Compress the heck out of it.
I do compress it, but I find like the loud bits when you compress it, they tend up.
They squash.
Really,
and then
why didn't you compress it?
Because then they sound like a robot.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. Because the loud, if you do it too much, then the loud bits sound like they're squashed, and the quiet bits, all the background noise comes up, and it's just, and suddenly you get.
What I tend to do sometimes is I bring bits down, bring bits up, and then compress it, then add a bit more bass, then bring it back up again, and then it sounds. You swore. I nearly swore on my own show.
In response to your question, when do we find time? I think the main answer to that has got to be very, very, very understanding girlfriends and wives. That's basically it, really.
Especially my wife.
I mean, like today I've been working all day. I've gone home, scoffed 2 pieces of pizza, got changed, and went straight out the door again. And Mrs. was like, "Hi, bye, eat your food and go again." Now I do it.
But we've got Julie to thank as well now, because I'm not just like Shane. I'm kind of like Shane, Julie.
Yeah, it is handy. Yeah, because I mean, at first obviously I was doing it on his own, and then we had. I don't know what that was. We were doing Thorskin together, and now said, I'm going to need some help with Biscuit, and sort of started help with the Biscuit.
So I scaled you down from the Thorskin show to the Biscuit more.
I mean, and then we got some more help, and then we got some more help.
It's just nice. It's nice to find people that are as passionate.
But Judy's great.
Yeah,
so far she's been.
Everybody that's attached to this.
You should tell me about the brainstorm that she did, like straight off the bat, like almost straight away.
Julie, I went for coffee with Julie in the morning. I think it was a Wednesday morning. I don't know what it. By the Friday, we met up again, and she'd had a full cloud chart drawn of different things. I think I've got it. It's not on the fridge, is it? No. She had the whole town laid out. She
had the podcast labelled into like sections, and then like off that, like people who would be involved in that sort of section of topic, I guess. And she made this brainstorm.
That's production at a very high level.
And we were like, there you go, that's next year's podcasting done. Yeah. Just book it.
So anyone who can do that is such an asset.
Yeah, she is. She's amazing. Right, well, let's wrap this up, because we've been going for 1 hour and 17 minutes.
Really?
It's been a long show. No. I've really enjoyed this show. It's been really good.
I did a 5-hour Star Wars one the other day.
Yeah, you are.
That wasn't supposed to happen.
It's not supposed to be 5 hours.
Like the
You
volume.
not get to the point where you think I'm really starving and I need the dog.
Well, the thing is, right?
Time elapsed 3 minutes, 3 hours,
space bar.
44.
The first volume we did was meant to do episodes 1, 2, and 3 of Star Wars, an hour a piece, right? But Eric Fluger is a famous artist in America, but he's like the professor of Star Wars, and he's such a joy to talk to. And I was like, he wasn't quite happy with how he did it last time. He wanted to vent and wanted to tell things as they were, because he looks at the philosophical side of things, and he is working on one of the most amazing pieces of art I have ever seen in my life. I'll show you before you go. And I just wanted to let him talk. But once he started going, you couldn't stop him, and I just didn't want to stop him in his stride. So I was like, yeah. I mean, we had a really good to and fro. It was really good, but. He really enjoyed it. But what we're going to have to do now is, rather than do one big, long volume, we're going to have to do it in 3 separate bits, because people will be
and just to put it in perspective, it took him 2.5 hours to edit 40 minutes.
So there may not be the level issue.
So Eric, if you're listening and you're wondering why it's not out yet, that's why.
Right. Production.
Thank you so much for joining us on the show.
It's been really fun.
I'd love to get you on again. We should do it again.
I would love to, seriously.
Maybe we can get on the cold seat as well. We'll be like, yeah.
Well, I thought there was a plan to do that at one point, but we have Julie, we have so many ideas and
I think we were talking to Tim about coming on, talking about Memoirs of a Salopian, but things have been, because Julie's going to America and you've got things you're dealing with. I didn't want to be like, sorry, BBC, we're busy. But I was kind of like, I had my hands tied. I was kind of like, what do I say? What do I do? I really want to get on. I'll come on tomorrow if you like,
Just do it on your own.
Yeah, sure. Let's do a bit of interchange between them. I'm more than happy to come on.
I couldn't do a story for a minute.
5 hours, though. No problem.
Yeah. Well, look at this. I mean, like, I nearly swore, but I didn't. Okay. We got through the show. Jim, thank you very much for joining us. We'll have you on again anytime you want to come on.
Yeah.
Guys, make sure you give this episode a like and a share, a subscribe. Tell people about this show, because that's the only way we grow. And we are growing at the moment. And it's because of you beautiful people. And make sure you join us next week. And thank you again to everyone. Thank you, Shane.
Cheers, Mom.
Yeah.
Thank you, Al.
Thank you, Jim.
Well done, Al.
Thank you.
Cheers, Mom.
Well done, Vivi. Oh, that's
well done, mate. Well done.
You never say well done to me, so that's really nice.
Well done, you.
Thank you very much. Guys, peace out.
Peace out.
Bye.